we have Andrew Murray, Chair of Stop the War. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Romain. As Natalie has just said, this week the House of Commons voted for war, the fourth war of this century. The previous three, of course, haven't finished. The Afghan war begun in 2001, continuing to this day. The Iraq war begun in 2003, bombing still continuing, a country riven and divided. The Libyan war, a country that has a state that has collapsed as a result of the Western military intervention, a conflict still continuing. One should also add, I suppose, the conflict in the Yemen. No British military involved, but the Saudi regime using British money to drop British bombs from British-built planes on the people of the Yemen with the full endorsement of the British government. And now this war in Syria. And the reasons for these wars are just getting worse and worse, but more and more revealing. We've moved on from fighting the Taliban, finding non-existent weapons of mass destruction, protecting civilians by destroying the state in which they live, to now, ostensibly, fighting the deranged, self-proclaimed caliphate of the Islamic State. A caliphate which has already been fought by vastly more powerful air forces than ours for the last 2 years, without any great discernible consequence. But this militarily insignificant intervention is politically crucial. And the reason for it that has been offered, more or less overtly, by the government and by its supporters, is by getting involved, by joining in the bombing of this most over-bombed country in the world, we are getting a seat at the table. We are dropping bombs and killing people so Philip Hammond can join all the other foreign ministers around the table in Vienna. The table is getting bigger and bigger, presumably as more and more join in, with his head held high that we are involved. And you may have overlooked, it's understandable, in all the excitement in the House of Commons, there's a debate in the House of Lords on the same day about Syria, where William Hague, the former Foreign Secretary, said, we may have to accept that Iraq and Syria cannot be preserved in their present form. There may need to be new boundaries drawn. Here is the heir to Sykes, one half of the Sykes-Picot team, now wanting to make sure that Britain is at the table when there is a new division of the Middle East. Now, while there can be any number of reasons, and Stop the War welcomes them all, for people to oppose this war, I would say that the rationale given for this invasion, the remarks of William Hague, show beyond doubt that whatever the complexities of a situation in Syria, the intervention by the British government is an imperialist intervention in the traditions of imperialism, and we must oppose it as imperialism should have been opposed. Those of you who were at our demonstration in Downing Street a week ago will have heard Tarek, who's speaking later, say quite rightly, in the British Labour movement there have always been two traditions, a pro-imperialist tradition and an anti-imperialist tradition, and unfortunately it is the former that has prevailed for most of that history. But this week in Parliament, as never before, we saw the two traditions confronting each other, albeit from the same side of the House, and the anti-imperialist tradition won that vote. Nearly 3 times as many Labour MPs supported Jeremy Corbyn's call for peace as supported Hilary Benn's call for bombing. And while it would be foolish to say that this represents a categorical victory for the anti-imperialist tradition, it is a huge step forward. And we can all be proud and fully support the tremendous stand that Jeremy Corbyn took this week in leading most of his party into the lobbies for peace Commons. And as for Hilary Benn, now lauded as a great parliamentary orator, the Cicero for the tornadoes taking off, well, I can't speak for all my comrades on this platform, but I can for myself and for Lindsay, with whom I consulted earlier. If Hilary Benn wants to debate any one of us, anywhere, in London or in Leeds, bring it on! Now, I believe it is because of our successes that Stop the War is under so much attack at the moment. The whole page in The Economist, no less, yesterday, devoted to attacking us. And a regular dribble, and I think that is the right word, of sniping from the comment pages of The Guardian and everything in between. Now, Stop the War is not perfect. We don't always formulate things exactly right. Even in this present crisis, a couple of things appear on our website I rather hadn't. But what is happening now is a witch hunt designed to criminalise and drive down any possibility of protest under the most spurious heading of preventing bullying of MPs. Now, Stop the War has always been against abuse and intimidation. We have never needed to resort to it. We would not resort to it. We rely on democratic argument because we always win the democratic argument. And any honourable and right honourable member has nothing to fear from us. But what a farce it has been this week. We've had the peace vigil in Walthamstow. First, it was supposed to have turned up outside the honourable member for Walthamstow's house, only it turned out they didn't. Then they were supposed to be hurling abuse at the staff in her constituency office. Well, it was late in the evening, there was no staff there at all. People are supposed to be expelled from the Labour Party for taking part in this event, which reached its climax by sticking post-it notes on the door of the office saying, "Don't bomb Iraq." Let me make it clear, Stop the War is against any abuse of post-it notes in the political struggle. Just as we are against posting unwelcome images to MPs. There's one reference, I don't know if it actually was true or not, about a picture of a severed head. I must admit, I thought that must be the tender document for the Saudi Arabian prison contract we were supposed to be voting on. But there's emojis, renegade emojis being sent. All sorts of unpleasantness. The worst story was an unnamed shadow cabinet member, God knows why this genius wants to keep his or her identity secret, said that Jeremy Corbyn was inciting violence against MPs when he said that those who voted for war would not have a hiding place. This is supposed to be incitement to jihadis to attack Labour MPs. This unnamed shadow cabinet member, the answer to his hiding place, he wants to take us back 200 years to the days when you couldn't legally report on proceedings in Parliament. They could all carry on in secret, and if anyone voted for war, you could say, "It wasn't me, it was the other guy, I'm sorry." This is a farce. All this campaign, stoked up in the last few days, is designed to criminalise, drive underground and obstruct anti-war protests, and it is not going to work. Now, the final thing I want to say to you, brothers and sisters, is this. A lot of people say, or sometimes they say to me or to Lindsay or to one of us, "Well, I do agree with you, but do you have to be so intransigent?" I'm not sure I can fully satisfy our critics on this point. This is, as I said, the fourth time around. As it happens, Bob Dylan had a song of that name. I think George will know what album it was on. But it does say, Bob Dylan in that, "Don't forget, everybody that gets..." Everybody must give something back for something they get. Now, we are getting more war, and what we can give back is the truth, including the truth about the Stop the War coalition. And it is this: we were right in opposing the war in Afghanistan. We were right in opposing the war in Iraq. We were right in opposing the war in Libya, and those of us who demonstrated outside Parliament this week are right too, and we are going to be vindicated. And the only tragedy is the world has had to wade through an ocean of blood and hatred to get to this point. But this vote on Wednesday will be repudiated in the future, and until then, Stop the War will fight the warmongers all out and, yes, intransigently. Thank you.